Hi, I'm Kirby Allison, and we love to help the well-dressed acquire and care for their wardrobes. Today I'm here with two very special individuals. I'm here with a master shoemaker, one of the most highly respected and regarded lastmakers here in London, and a master tailor and co-headcutter. I'm here with John Carnera and Dario Carnera, none other than father and son. I'm Kirby Allison, and I love helping the well-dressed acquire and care for their wardrobes. Join me as we explore the world of quality, craftsmanship, and tradition. And so in London, the tradition of passing on craft from father to son really is what has kept this industry going for so long and what has created the rich, deep heritage and tradition that has made London tailoring and London shoemaking so special and so renowned in the world. And so to have the two of you joining me here today, is sending shivers up my back. It's a tremendous privilege and honor. Thank you so much.
You're too
Mr.
kind.
Carnera and Dario.
Very nice to see you. Thank you.
It's incredible to just think, really, between the two of you, the trade that's represented here.
Well, I've been in my business now. I'm in my 64th year. So I started as a 15-year-old apprentice. In fact, I couldn't even start the apprenticeship for a year, so I spent a year polishing shoes. And then I started my apprenticeship at the age of 16 and finished at 21, and then became first a cutter, and then a last maker, and then a closer, and then a maker. But in the end, I had to choose between one or the other, so I chose last making, designing, and cutting, and that's what I did.
And you've kind of run the gamut through, I guess, Jermyn Street, which is where shoemaking was traditionally, and now, of course, you're at George Cleverley, as their, senior last maker, and you were with, one of the founders of the firm, back in the late 80s. Is that right?
Absolutely. George and I worked together. George Cleverley and I worked together for 13 years, side by side, and I was already fairly experienced at that point when I met him, but it was always my ambition to meet and work with him. And it was the greatest pleasure of my life when he and I worked together for all those years.
And then Dario, you didn't follow your father, into the shoe trade.
No.
You broke out into tailoring, which is the same world. How did that happen?
Well, it's very much the same world. I remember fondly our trips to Newmarket with Mr. Cleverley, and we used to come up to visit the shop, my father at the shop often, and I was always sort of fascinated by the Row and the whole area and industry. And even though Father always said business and family don't really mix, so that was never really an option. But I always admired the whole world, and I got to finish my schooling, and at 18 decided to try and get an apprenticeship, which I managed to do. Mr. Norman Horsey at Anson & Shepherd kindly took me as an apprentice originally.
Not a bad place to begin.
Yeah, no, I owe him a lot. He took a chance on me and gave me that chance. And I always wanted to go into the cutting side, but he said to me, now let's get you, just learn making first, and we want you to be the whole products at the end of this. So I did, and did apprenticeship, and ended up a coat maker for nearly 10 years, I think.
Really?
Before I started going in. Most of that was at Anson Shepherd, and I went to work for Mr. Fallon around the corner after that, and then was learning pattern cutting that from there, and that was 27 years ago now.
Wow.
So
it's amazing how time flies.
Yeah, it goes very quickly.
And then here you are as co-headcutter at Huntsman. One of the most well-regarded and well-respected firms on the entire row. John, does that make you proud as a father to kind of see your son?
When I knew that he would go into a craft business, because that was the way he was. He had a great eye for things, and also this attention to detail that he's always had. He was ideal for this kind of work.
And so, was there anything that you saw your father doing, kind of in his trade or in his craft, or just even interests that that you felt really kind of inspired you to follow his footsteps?
Yeah, there was, but I was unaware of the level of my father's expertise and craft before I came into this world. I mean, everybody knows what their father does, but I mean, to be perfectly honest, as a teenager, probably really didn't
care.
Didn't have that much interest. When I started to come into this world and then see how he was regarded and see some of the work again, even because we've got a lot of the same customers, as you probably have heard, and I would see them come in their shoes, and I see the products a lot more than I would have before that, and to learn from these people how he was respected in the industry, and I've learned that more and more, and just more.
Yeah.
Couldn't be more proud.
You know, my grandfather always said that, you know, the greatest thing you can give a son is a last name. And there's no question that within this trade, the Carnera name really carries weight.
Well, I hope so.
Well, it's nice to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, you can't say that, but I can. So at what point, Dario, I mean, did you really, you know, as you started working in the trade, I mean, was there a point where you just kind of stepped back and fully appreciated, you know, kind of like your father's, you know, or just...
It was right from day one. When even when I met Mr. Halsey for my first job interview, he didn't actually know I was initially, I don't think, because I've always been brought up that, and it's important to me that I make my own way in the world, and I try to do that as much as I can. The last thing I want to do is hang off of my father's coattails. But even Mr. Halsey, right from day one, was nothing but praise I heard about my father. He was just so well regarded by customers and craftsmen alike all through the West End. And to this day, I've never heard a bad word said about him, which I can't be more proud of. So. And
what about with traveling? I mean, you know, you're both traveling. I mean, I guess you're not traveling anymore.
No.
But, I mean, I guess meeting customers that, you know, do your father. I mean, is that something that happens often?
Oh, yeah. In all cities across the United States, certainly, and like other countries as well. But yeah, I've customers that I've been looking after for many years now will predate me by 20, 30 years of being looked after by you. So, and it's really nice. A lot of them don't know for a while and they suddenly will click on the surname or something, or they'll just know me as Dario for many years, and then they'll find out my surname. So, hang on a minute. So,
Dario, when was the first time your father made a pair of shoes for you?
With myself and my brother have had one pair of bespoke shoes for our wedding day.
Okay.
And so we got a last, and we got a pair of shoes, and I treasure those.
That's special.
So that was, so I thought that was very special that he did that.
And what was that like? I mean, you know, here you are, you've spent your, you know, entire career making shoes for other people. You know, to be able to make a pair of shoes for your son to their wedding day, I imagine had to be pretty special.
Terrified, because in case I crippled
So they're
him.
limping down the aisle.
Luckily, he liked your... walking down there.
Luckily, he was fond of your fiancée. You know? What's up, Dario? You can't make it. The shoes are too small.
Well, it was bad enough making for my sons, but I actually made for my wife as well.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, that seems like a lose-lose.
So there you go.
Yeah. But I've also made you suits now, eventually, as well.
Yeah.
You returned the favor.
We did, I did eventually. Yeah, it took me too much time, but we did in the end.
Well,
so we both held patterns for each other. So,
and there we go. Dario, I mean, you've got children now.
Yeah.
You know, do you see them kind of following any of your footsteps? Is that something that's important to you?
They've not expressed any serious aspirations.
They're still quite young, though, aren't they?
But yeah, they're still pretty young. My son's 11 and my daughter's 13. But saying that, there are times where I sometimes come up here at the weekend to do some work on a Saturday.
Bring them with you.
And yeah, more often now I'm getting, can I come with you and watch you do so, which is nice. So I don't particularly encourage it, but I won't discourage it, because I think, as my father said before, you've got to have a genuine affection and a thing for this trade to do it.
Because it really is, I mean...
It's a labour of love.
It is a labour of love. I mean, in order to really be successful, you've got to be committed to the foundation, like you described earlier. If you want to be a master last maker or a bespoke tailor, you know, you have to, do all the other bits that kind of roll into it.
Oh, yeah.
In order for you to really understand how it goes back down.
Well, my wife and I never pushed any of our children in any particular direction. They had to express themselves and do what they were interested in doing. And that's hopefully what they've done. And I'm proud of all three of them.
Yeah.
You know, they're all in different... I always say, he was the craftsman, his sister is the administrator, and his brother's the salesman.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
On paper, we make a great team.
Yes. Well, family businesses are challenging indeed. for managing those family dynamics. And, they take some businesses down and then other businesses flourish. The trade has been going on for a long time. And I think, during the 80s and 90s, it was really challenged. I think maybe we're seeing a little bit of a renaissance now. Do you have any concerns about, Dario's children or Dario's, grandchildren, your grandchildren and great-grandchildren, really having the privilege to experience true bespoke craftsmanship the way we are today?
No, I think the future still looks good. The fact of the matter is, our kind of businesses are something which a lot of young people would aspire to go for and to learn. But the trouble is, sometimes youngsters have a rather romantic idea of what it's like. His is a much cleaner business than mine. Mine, I've had a lot of apprentices which I've taught, and there are two things that you have to look at. When I get a young apprentice, the first thing I want to see in him is, can he understand shapes? When you look at a shape, can he see it? Mm-hmm. Some people have a natural eye for that, others don't. And others, they can work 20 years and they'll never really understand it. In my time, I've had 2 or 3 apprentices who I've only ever had to tell them once and they understood straight away. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. You have to find these particular people. Okay.
What do you think, Dario?
I think, in our industry, I've been told ever since I started, the day I started this, you shouldn't come into this trade. It's a dying trade, you're going to be struggling. And people are still saying that today, and I think it's going from strength to strength. Yeah. We've got many young people now. If anything, we can't accommodate all the young people that want to come and learn this trade. But as my father said, it's finding the right people. Not everybody has that. It's the same thing. It's about I say this to my young apprentice. Measurements they're very important, obviously, but it's about putting what you see into a pattern.
It's rock of the eye, as it's called.
It is, it is rock of eye, and it's so invaluable in what we do. Yeah.
Does that same notion exist in bespoke shoemaking?
Well, the fact of the most important thing when I start making a last is I picture in my mind what the finished shoe will look like. Mm-hmm. And that's how I try to make that last. Yeah. Cleverley did that as well. Mm. And he taught me how to do that.
Okay. Do you start out similarly?
Yeah, it's about years. I do the same now with my young apprentice, because I wanted to get to a stage where if you're cutting a pattern, like I know, sometimes you make little errors along the way. There's a system you follow, obviously, but I know if I've got a certain way through a pattern, I say, oh no, I've done something wrong there, just simply from the way it looks, because it doesn't look how it should. Mm-hmm. In my mind. And that's what I want him to get to the stage of, where he can just recognise. And I can see a pattern when I've finished it, I'll stand back and look at it, and I'm like, well, no, I must have done something. So it's just all in your, as my father said, I've got a vision of what I want something to look like ultimately. Yeah.
And that's experience, and there's no way to rush that process.
No, it's not just experience. Experience is very important, but it's that natural eye as well. You've got to have that eye.
Some people can just see it straight away, and then you're on a winner.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit. So both of you, again, there's so much tradition in this industry. Do you think that that's important, the tradition?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The thing is, I think we ought to respect tradition, because the way it was presented to me, I like to present it to the next generation. To him, to my apprentices.
What do you think the role of fathers are in helping perpetuate this?
I think guidance, discipline.
Key word there.
To me, having run my own business anyway, there are 2 things that make sense. 1 is hard work, and 2 is common sense. Those are the 2 things you need. Yeah. Otherwise, you don't have to be a genius. Yeah.
But also just even from a client perspective, having a father come in with the son and kind of initiate him into this. Oftentimes, you were introduced to your tailor by your father. Do you still see that happening? I mean, your shoemaker, your tailor?
Oh yeah, I will gain a young man as a new customer that I've known in some cases for 10 years because they've been coming in with their father for the fittings, and they'll get to a certain age and they'll start having stuff made themselves. And so, yeah, that's 2-3 generations. We also have customers bring back their father's clothing for adjustment so they can wear them again, and that's a testament to the quality of make really as well, as much as anything else. And it's nice that we can do these things.
Well, I feel like a good father, helps, save their children of mistakes of, unpleated trousers, low-waisted trousers, and, shoes, glued together shoes. But I guess, the flip side of that is inevitably, we children probably aren't the best listeners to our fathers at certain times.
No,
so,
still end up making a lot of our own mistakes.
Maybe that's an ideal,
That's the way life is.
Yeah, that's the way life is.
So,
Well, I had the privilege of actually taking George Cleverley with me on our first trip to America.
Did you really?
Yeah, he came with me, and he was
This
in
is
his
under
late
Tushak?
70s.
Who was it with?
Sorry?
Under which firm was that
That
with?
was with New and Lingwood,
Okay.
Holst and Scone.
Okay.
And so I said to him one day, George, do you ever fancy, because I knew he had a fantastic amount of clients out there, ever fancy a trip to New York? He said, oh, yes, boy. He said, when are you going? So I said, well, I go in October. Yeah, I'll come with you. And he
Okay.
did. He came with me for a week in New York. And do you know what? We didn't have a lot of business there at the time. Well, when people heard that Cleverley was in New York, it was amazing.
Really?
People turned up from all over the place. They used to come from Los Angeles
Wow.
to New York to meet him.
And George Cleverley was in his 70s at this time.
Was it what?
Did you say he was in his 70s?
He was probably, he was my age as I am now, about 78.
Was he still making?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. He and I were working together at the time, So, yeah, but I've never seen, he was looked up to so highly, and I was amazed.
Yeah. What was it that you think really distinguished him amongst all the West End shoemakers? Because, back in that era, I mean, in many ways unlike today, I mean, there was a really thriving bespoke shoe business, I mean, even more so than today.
Well,
and there was a lot of people making shoes.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the time, there must have been 30, 40 bespoke shoemakers in the West End.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, different firms. But Cleverley added a new dimension to bespoke shoemaking. Previously, bespoke shoes were very good, well-made, strong, but a bit agricultural. He decided to add a new dimension to that. You could say you could make a lightweight shoe look good and fit the customer and still be strong. And that was his secret.
Okay.
And that's what he did. He added this dimension, suddenly this cleverly toe, chiseled toe, and nobody had ever seen that before. This is back in the 20s and 30s, because in those days they were fairly pointed toe or round toe.
Very round.
But he, as I say, he added this new dimension.
That's incredible. I mean, when you think about it in retrospect, it may seem so simple, but at the time it was really quite iconoclastic and revolutionary.
Yeah, well, credit goes to him. He had an amazing eye for style, and he knew exactly what was going to. Had a great commercial brain as well as being.
So it was quite good with clients too.
Oh, terrific! Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, he also turned down some of the most famous people you could imagine.
And why would that have been?
Because he didn't like them.
There you go.
I won't mention any names, but there was one very famous film star. The story goes that he was having his shirts made by, who was the fella in Pall Mall? Anyway, this shirt maker in Pall Mall. And he said to this shirt maker, a fella called Chester, he said, Mr. Chester, can you direct me to a shoemaker? I need some shoes, a good shoemaker. So Chester said, yeah, I know the very man. I'll take you out to see him.
Okay.
And he was in Pall Mall. George was in Cork Street at the time. So up he takes him to Cork Street, used to be in the basement. he said, George, I'd like you to meet a very valued client of mine, Mr. So-and-so. So he says, oh, I'm too busy now, boy. Tell him to come back next year.
Unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. That was George, you know. He was very naive in certain ways, you know, but in other ways he was very, very clued up. But, you know, names didn't mean anything to him. As far as he was concerned, this fella could have been John Smith.
Yeah. Now, what type of introduction do you think mattered most to him?
I think politeness. He didn't like aggressive people, you know, and people must tell him the truth and not start telling him stories. Then he would switch off.
Yeah. And so how did you end up at Huntsman? I mean, what was that journey like?
It was, well, sadly, I think circumstances being different, I may not have ended up here because Keith, I was very loyal to Keith. He spent a lot of time with me, and you knew Keith very well as well. I respected him. He was a good man, but unfortunately, got very ill and passed away long before his time, and things were never really quite the same for me around there after that. And his brother kindly showed me a lot of stuff after Keith became ill, which I'll always be grateful for also. But just the opportunity arose to come here, and it was too good a chance to miss, really.
Absolutely.
So.
I mean, it's such a renowned firm. I mean, it's interesting how, you know, a founder passing away is so much a part of kind of these firms kind of moving different directions. I mean, that's part of your story at Cleverley, and, you know, G.J. Cleverley, you know, George Cleverley now. I mean, you were at, you know, what was it, Peel, or what was?
Olsen Scone to begin with, and then it was taken over by New and Lingwood.
New and Lingwood,
shirt makers.
yeah.
And then George Glasgow and I, after George Cleverley had passed away, restarted Cleverley.
But it was the ownership of New and Lingwood that basically said, okay, we're not going to do bespoke shoes anymore, because you guys had quite a bespoke department.
Well, what happened was it became a bit difficult. New and Lingwood was sold to somebody who really didn't understand bespoke work, and he really wanted to pile them high and sell them cheap. And so George Glasgow and I decided this wasn't for us, and it was the right time to reopen Cleverley. And this is what we did. With our own money, no help from anyone.
Yeah. How was it? I mean, do you remember this happening?
Oh yeah, I do remember. I remember being sat down as I think I was a teenager at the time, and you know.
92.
Yeah, I remember. Like, things are going to be tight for a while because
mind your lunch
big
money.
investments are being made, and so and.
Well, mind you, I was lucky in some ways because I part-owned New and Lingwood.
Okay.
So when the business was sold, I obviously made a fair amount of money as well. So that
kind of helped you start
and starting the business.
Yeah. But even then, I mean, you know, I mean, some of these firms have been around forever, and you know, there's a certain stubbornness to the trade. So for someone new to move in, I imagine that, you know, there was probably a little bit of headwind there just from the trade itself. Was that experienced?
You know, the thing is, what do you mean restarting Cleverley?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, kind of restarting this new firm.
You have to remember that Cleverley had only died about a year, 18 months previously. So the name Cleverley was still very much to the fore in a lot of people's minds, certainly a lot of London society.
But he had been working for New and Lingwood, hadn't he? Or had he actually had?
He was
trading under his own name?
Actually, how we met was his lease ran out in Cork Street here.
Okay.
And he came to me, he'd heard about me, and he obviously must have liked what he'd heard. And he came to me and said, John, do you mind if I come and see my clients in your shop?
Okay.
So I said, no, I'd be delighted, George. You're most welcome. And that's what he did. He used to see his clients, and gradually he would introduce me to them, and we took them over. So when we started Cleverley in the Royal Arcade, I already had about 200 prospective Cleverley clients on the books. And in fact, some of these people were so good to us. One, a titled person, I'll never forget him. He looked in the window and he saw me, and I opened the door. He said, how are you doing? I said, fine, my lord, how's things? He said, fine, do you need any money? I said, no, we're fine. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll start you off on the right foot. Make me a pair of black and a pair of brown of those.
That's it.
And he wasn't the only one. There were others with him.
That's amazing. Yeah. So you both occupy different elements or kind of different corners of the bespoke kind of lifestyle, right? I mean, John, you're doing shoemaking. Dario, you're doing, suit making, tailoring. How would you describe the essence of like what drives someone to bespoke and what makes that special from two different perspectives?
From my point of view, one of the reasons that people would want a handmade shoe is it fits better, it looks better, and the quality is better. Mm-hmm. Those are the three basic reasons. And all my customers understand that. If you want something that's going to be different, that's going to be the best you can buy quality-wise, and is going to be the best that'll fit, it makes sense. Yeah. If you've got the money.
Yeah. What about you, Dario? What do you kind of see?
I have to say, I don't want to disappoint, but it's very similar from my perspective. I think it's the best customers of mine understand the process as well and understand that to get the best and something that fits perfectly and looks perfect, it's that time investment as well. Yeah. It's not even the first suit that will be the best. You can perfect the pattern after a couple of suits, maybe more.
Well, it certainly is a process, and I think these people that just go to maker and have them do one thing, and then go on to the next maker and have them do one thing because they want to try everyone, really in some ways miss, the true zenith of bespoke, which is having a mature relationship that's developed over years with your maker. Yeah. I mean, how important do you think that relationship with the customer and the maker is?
There's a lot of trust on both sides. Mm. And I'm lucky enough now to have got to the stage with a lot of my customers where they'll just phone up and speak to one of the guys and get Dario to pick me a suit. Because they know that for one, I know what they've already had, so I won't pick the same thing. Yeah. And they can trust me to know their style, what they would like, how I know what they want to look like. And they...
Yeah, it's, the same. I mean, we've had 3 generations of the same family at the same time making shoes for. And, one hands that down to his son and to his son again, and that's the way it is. But, sometimes I have had people who maybe buy handmade shoes for maybe the wrong reason. Mm-hmm. It's...
what do you think those reasons are?
Well, it's to make them look better or...
just to say you're wearing expensive shoes.
Yeah, and I don't know whether they truly appreciate it. That's would have really upset Mr. Cleverley. Okay. He wouldn't have been able to do that. Yeah. He wouldn't have been able to make for you if that was your attitude.
Yeah. Who are the clients that you think that you appreciate the most and enjoy working with the most?
Well,
not particularly, but I mean, generally speaking.
The thing is, I'm always nervous about mentioning names. No, you've not heard me mention any names, and we've made for some very famous people. One who I'm sure won't mind is Prince Charles. Yeah, of course. You know the story about the Russian reindeer hide?
I'm familiar with it, but I'm sure we'd love to hear it from your perspective.
Well, without boring you, actually, it was at New and Lingwood when Mr. Cleverley was there with me. And this client came in from Dallas, your part of the world, and he said, have you ever heard of Russian calf? I said, yes. I said, but it's not been made since the Russian Revolution. Well, he says, I know somebody who's got some. I said, really? Yeah. And so he'd been on a tour of Britain and he'd ended up in Falmouth in Cornwall. And this fella had somehow got hold of this leather, which was from the wreck of a shipwreck which had gone down in 1786. And some of this leather had been salvaged by this amateur diving club. And this fella had bought some of this leather. And he'd put it in the window, and there was this skin in the window. This client saw it and was interested and heard the story and came up to town and met me. And I said, well, I'd love to see this. Well, he says, as a matter of fact, I was going to America then, and we used to go to Houston and Dallas and still do. And I met him in Dallas, and he rolled out this skin. And as soon as I smelt it, I knew this was the genuine Russian calf, because it had this particular smell, birch oil, and you couldn't mistake it.
I remember it well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so anyway, I came back and I said to my colleagues at New and Lingwood, I said, I've got to go and see about this. I'm going to take a trip to Falmouth and take the family with me. So we went down for the weekend in Falmouth.
Okay, so you were a part of the discovery.
Yeah, and I met this fella, Snelson, and he was actually buying some of the skins from the divers. It was an amateur diving club, and they'd got a blessing from Prince Charles to recover the leather.
Because it was in his waterway.
Because it was part of the Duchy of Cornwall. And so we bought some of the leather. I brought it back, cleaned it, dressed it, and we decided to give the first pair to Prince Charles. And we wrote to his equerry, and he said, yeah, His Royal Highness might be very interested. So he did tell him, and next thing is he got me an audition to meet Prince Charles at Kensington Palace, and I measured him there. I was supposed to have a 15-minute audience, but Prince Charles was so fascinated with the story that we were there for an hour, and his equerry was going behind his back. He was supposed to be at the Derby at Epsom, you know.
Well, the Russian Reindeer is one of the most authentic stories I've ever heard.
Well, like I say, it's probably the best leather. I mean, I grew up listening about it from my seniors, you know, who were teaching me the trade. And I was so upset that it wasn't made anymore, but the secret had been lost, you know. And to have this find was absolutely phenomenal. And they carried on bringing this leather up. And I would go down, we'd go down every year, and I would select the best of these skins. I had first choice. And we went on like that for years. And now it's unfortunately run out. Yeah. But we made some great shoes from it.
And what are your memories of kind of driving down with the family to go?
Yeah, we used to, with the regular visits to Falmouth, I remember the first visit even, and well, we grew up, eventually became quite close with the Snelson family. We grew up sort of almost alongside their children.
Summering with them, you know, as you were driving out to
I still go down and see him.
Yeah. So, we had lovely weekends down in Falmouth, and we'd go, always remember that I don't think Mum was too pleased with the smell around the house for a week or so afterwards with all the skins in.
Well, this
is a very strong smell.
It was so distinctive, and it did overpower things, didn't it?
Yeah, it was very distinctive. If there were many skins in the same place, it became a bit overpowering, but beautiful smell, yeah.
I've got a pair, and whenever I walk into my closet, you know, if they've been there long enough, I can really...
Even now, I can see...
Smell them.
As I said, we share customers, and I know if a customer walks into a hotel room or a fitting room here, I can tell if they're wearing genuine Russian calf.
It's funny because actually, just as a little aside afterwards, my wife and I, with my wife's cousins from Canada, were doing a tour of Britain, and we were in Edinburgh, and we were at the bottom of the Royal Mile, and suddenly this car pulled up with the Royal Standard at the top, and out stepped Prince Charles, and he ran down this side street and then came back and decided to do a walkabout. And my wife, he came to us and said, hello, how are you? And all the rest of it. And my wife said, have you still got the Russian Reindeer shoes? This was about 20 years after we'd made them.
Okay.
And he said, good heavens, he says, he made them, pointing to me. So it's strange.
And I'm sure your cousins were just like, you know, didn't know what to think of all of this.
Well, actually, my wife's cousin curtsied.
That's
you remember
funny.
Myrtle?
Yeah.
What a memory. Well, thank you two so much for joining me.
Well, thank you.
You know, I've got so much respect, you know, Mr. Carnera, for everything you do at George Cleverley And Dario, I mean,
Thanks,
you know, I've
yeah.
seen your work.
Yeah.
I mean, the work that you're doing here at Huntsman
Yeah.
is
Did you
just
see Mr.
first
Shenika's
rate.
clothes, yeah?
Yeah,
Mr.
absolutely.
Shenika's got all his clothes now.
He
So.
sure does. So,
Hope he's enjoying it.
you know, I think
I'd like to add that without people like you, our businesses wouldn't thrive so well.
Yeah.
So you are very important.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you know, I really feel that, you know, there's an opportunity for us to help pass on this tradition. And, you know, we really believe in quality, craftsmanship, and tradition.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us, you know, that maybe didn't have their fathers teach that to them, you know, we have the internet and, you know, hopefully these videos are able to, and speaking with you and kind of bundling that collective knowledge, you know, we're really able to pass that forward in a way that allows people like me to, you know, really go out on a limb and invest the money in quality and craftsmanship because they know how to take care of it. But in doing so, you know, really being initiated into a tradition of being well-dressed, you know, well-mannered, and, you know, well-spoken. And, you know, that's, I think, the pursuit of all of us. Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Well, thank you.
Yeah.